as we go through our lives, through our healing journey, through spiritual growth, the ego is always something that comes up, and always something that people and we have trouble with, as we grow and evolve. It's often the focus of some types of meditation or spiritual modalities, or different spiritual ideas. It's a lot of the time it's the center focus, like dissolving the ego, deconstructing it. But we need to approach this in the proper way, like in a healthy, ideal way. The ego it's part of us, right? Even though it might be creating problems, or it might not be seeing things clearly, it's still a part of us, and we have to deal with it the right way, in a healthy way. And so that means that we have to meet the ego with compassion. We have to meet the ego with love. A lot of the times it's easy to, get angry at the ego, or be frustrated, or be fed up at what the ego says, or what the ego's doing. If a intrusive thought or negative thought pops into your head, you might be like, you might say something, or kind of curse at yourself, or get frustrated with what's happening. But we need to meet the ego with compassion, because here's why. Because the ego, it stems from fear, right? There's fear and there's love. And the whole part of the spiritual journey is moving away from fear to love. Those are the two kind of basic emotions on this journey, right? A lot of the spiritual journey is just that, shifting from fear to love. If we've had trauma, we've been living in fear for a while, and so the goal is to shift back to love. So the ego, it stems from fear, right? If we've had a rough childhood, or abusive relationships, whatever it is, the ego, it can only live off fear, and it's built out of fear. If we didn't have any trauma or any social conditioning or cultural, or all that stuff, we'd just be pure love, that just like we are in the spirit world and as souls. We just stay in that state because we come down to earth and there's all this crazy stuff going on. Then the ego gets built out of fear, right? So because the ego is a fear thing, an object of fear, then it doesn't make sense to meet it with more fear and judgment or hatred, or saying like, get away, or beat it. It doesn't make sense. Just like if a fearful child, if you're like walking down the street and a scared child runs up to you and has lost their parent, or is just fearful, or whatever, you don't say screw off, or you don't judge them, you tend to them. So this is what we need to do with our ego, which is just a part of us that is fearful. We need to meet it with compassion and meet it with love. We need to meet it as our soul essence. We need to be our soul essence. Like, we need to be in the place of our soul, our pure soul. the soul that we are in the spirit world, the soul that we are in our purest form, we need to meet the ego from that place rather than meeting the ego from ego. You know what I mean? Like, if we meet the ego with our ego, it creates, more tension or more problems or an inner conflict. If we embody our soul essence and meet the ego with love and actually tend to it and care for it and give it support in the way that it needs, then it just makes so much sense and it's way better. Things get resolved or fears are released. We can actually tend to the ego like a good loving parent almost. And as the pure souls that we are, right, we're pure love is our essence. So when we can embody this and help the ego and show it that everything's okay, or that we've got it under control as the souls that we are, it can start to release and relax and, dissolve in a way. We don't want to shoo it away. We don't want to kick it away because that is part of us. Right? I remember hearing this story of this yogi in the 70s, and he was trying to get spiritual awakening and was meditating for hours a day. He visualized locking his ego self away in a room. And he thought this was good, right? He thought it was going well. But then a few months later, he realized, oh crap, what have I done, right? So he went and rescued the ego from that room and burst into tears and had a breakdown, essentially. This is serious stuff. The ego, it's part of us. It's like a living part of us. We need to treat it with compassion and love and, actual support, just like a loving parent to a child. And we can tell it what it needs to hear to relax. I made another video about this. What does the ego need to hear to relax? For me, I needed to hear a lot of the time that I am safe. So I would just write that in my journal, I am safe. Or if I was feeling fearful, I can just tell myself that I am safe. But from the place of me as a pure soul, rather than trying to deal with the ego from embodying your ego. You might be able to feel that difference. Can you feel when you're more living in the place of your soul body, like your love essence? Or can you feel when you're more living out of your fear body, which is the ego? I definitely notice the feeling. The soul body, the pure love essence, it just feels like me. It feels really pure light and, almost eternal. Like there's an eternal wisdom and just, a lighter frequency. Whereas when I'm in the fear body, the ego body, it's like down here, I can't breathe almost. And there's all these thoughts going on in my head that I know don't really belong to me. So, yeah, this is super powerful. Meet your ego with love and compassion and support.